Shanti mantra. If anyone has the book and wants to join online or has it memorized, it's 144 in this book. 144?
Shanti mantras.
Yeah, 144 and 145? 145, 146, so it's page 145 at the bottom. Om Sahanā-Vavatu, Sahanā Bhunaktu, Saha Viryam Karavavahai, Tejasvinavaditamastu, Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Ambalo Sakuru Shivananda Maharaj Ki Jai. For all the saints and sages of all the traditions, Jai.
Jai.
Okay. Om Namah Shivaya. So, we continue with Viveka Chudamani, and we'll continue in the order of this particular book. There's a discussion. Yesterday we discussed Shankara himself and a little bit about Shankara and the greatness of Adi Shankaracharya, beyond imaginable greatness. Or we say that in the human experience, perfection is not possible, and yet perfection exists, and these very rare ones, not just saintly, not just surrendered, but who are channels for this highest teaching in the way that Shankaracharya is beyond imagination, and yet it exists. And so, yeah. Jai Gurudev. So the order of this particular text in terms of discussing the Viveka Chudamani, the text of Viveka Chudamani, is the author, Swami Prabhavananda, discusses the theory that Shankaracharya propounds, that he expounds upon or teaches, the underlying theory. And we'll take, I think, probably today and tomorrow discussing the theory, the philosophy, we can say, like this, the philosophy of Vedanta, but specifically Advaita Vedanta, non-dual highest teaching. There are several schools of Vedanta. Vedanta meaning the highest teaching, and many of them are dual, and then there are modified non-dual. But in fact, the school of philosophy that Shankaracharya shares is absolute non-dual, meaning there is only the one, there is only the highest. And so we'll explore that a little bit today and tomorrow, the philosophy. This author chooses to bring that forward, and then we'll step through the text itself, starting today's Wednesday, probably Saturday morning or Monday morning. But we'll continue in this order. So the first is this discussion of what is the philosophy that Shankaracharya is expounding. There's and I would write this, but we're having to get across the still flooded river crossing in order to get markers. So we'll have the whiteboard functioning shortly. But there's a statement that Shankaracharya makes, and we start here. He translates it. We'll share the original Sanskrit, which is Brahma Satyam Jagat Mithya Jivo Brahmeva Naparaha. And here he translates Brahman, and actually he describes the direct translation: Brahman, truth; world, jagat; mithya, illusory. And that will include a lot of discussion on this illusory, because we so easily misunderstand what's being shared. And then Jivo, the individual soul, and Brahmeva, the absolute, are non-different. So Naparaha meaning non-different. not meaning one directly, meaning non-different, and that's discussion.
The word Shiva and not Atman.
No, he uses Brahman, Jivo, Brahmeva, Naparaha. The soul, the individual soul, and Brahman are non-different.
Because what I hear, it's Atman and Brahman are non-different, not Shiva and Brahman.
I'm saying Jivo. Jivo, the soul, Atman.
Oh, okay.
Atman. Jivatman.
Oh, okay. So,
Jiva.
okay.
Thank you for saying that. Not saying Shiva. Thank you. Saying Jiva. Jiva.
Okay.
The individual soul.
That's it.
We'll often hear it as Atman, but the actual Sanskrit is Jivo. Jiva, the Jivatman, the individual soul.
Okay.
Atman can be used to describe the entirety of soul. Jiva is Jivatman is the individual soul, yes?
Yes.
Yeah. So Jivo Brahmeva Naparaha.
Because I often heard Jiva as the individual soul but wrapped with ego. So it's not like a pure thing, the Jiva.
There you go. So, but what is that impurity?
It's the identification, the mind.
And what is it? What is it? Is it non-different from Brahman? Is it different from Brahman? So here you are on the philosophy. Yeah. It's non-different.
Okay.
It's non-different. That's what he says.
Okay.
So we'll explore. Good. We've got something new for you.
So then Jiva, so then it's three things. It's Jiva, Atman, and Brahman.
No, he says Jiva. We'll usually hear it translated as Atman, but the Sanskrit is Jiva.
Okay.
Jiva, Atman.
Okay.
But Jivatman.
Jivatman.
Which is the Atman apparently constricted by the Uparadi, the limiting adjunct. Apparently so.
Yeah.
Okay. So here, translation. And so you come to the translation, which is normally the way we hear it. Brahman, the absolute existence, knowledge, and bliss, is real. So he adds the absolute existence, knowledge, and bliss. The author does. Brahman is real. And he's explaining the absolute existence, knowledge, and bliss. So the highest. The universe is not real. Brahman and Atman, man's inner self, are one. So this is the normal translation. Brahman and Atman are one. But if we look at the Sanskrit, then it's Jivo.
Okay.
Jivo Brahmeva. So he says the individual soul, my inner self. My inner self and the absolute are one.
But it's interesting because Atman is also a Sanskrit word. So it's not using Atman, but the translation is using Atman.
Yeah. But sometimes, you know that Atman sometimes is used to denote the individual soul and sometimes to denote the world soul.
Yes.
Yeah. But that modifying word of jiv is used for the individual soul. So he's actually saying that the individual soul and the absolute are one. But you stick around and see what he does to the individual soul. Does he not destroy the illusion of the individual soul?
Yes.
So individuality is, but still the I is what's being said. The I. It sounds like an esoteric discussion, and don't worry, we'll be exploring over the next couple of weeks this discussion we're just now having. But in fact, what's being shared is that the I that we experience, the I, which seems to be the body, or it seems to be the thoughts. We say, I'm angry, and it seems like the I is angry, but that's a confusion and a delusion, and so we step through this. And this is the philosophy, that the I that's always getting wrapped up is actually that absolute, non-different from it. We'll explore a little bit this morning even in terms of science, but a little more of the reading. He says, in these words, Shankara sums up his philosophy. What are the implications of this statement? What does he mean by real and by not real? Shankara only accepts as real that which neither changes nor ceases to exist. In making this definition, he follows the teachings of the Upanishads and of Gaudapada, his predecessor. No object, no kind of knowledge can be absolutely real if its existence is only temporary. Absolute reality implies permanent existence. We consider our various experiences during the states of waking and dreaming. We find that dream experiences are contradicted by the waking experiences and vice versa, and that both kinds of experience cease in dreamless sleep. Something we were discussing yesterday in Mandukya Upanishad. In other words, every object of knowledge, external or internal, for a thought or idea is as much an object of knowledge as is the external world, is subject to modification, and therefore, by Shankara's definition, not real. So there's a problem here that's being explored. What's the nature of the problem, and what's the nature of the solution to the problem? This is being explored. The problem is suffering. Quite frankly, Vedanta doesn't deal with something other than suffering. Vedanta is not about suffering and the cure for suffering. Vedanta doesn't have anything to do with anything else. So it doesn't have any worldly implications, although it can be lived. Vedanta can be lived. And we'll discuss that more as well as we step through this. But as a teaching, as a philosophy, as it were, what it exists to do is to explain the mystery of life in a way that we can grasp it, understand it, and live it. And in grasping it, understanding it, different. Grasping is mentally. Understanding means experientially. And living it. And living it is living in the real life that's being pointed to by the philosophy. Or living the real life that's being pointed to by the philosophy. So the system of philosophy itself exists in order that us, as an individual, can grasp it, understand it, and live it in this way. And be free of suffering. It's the efficacy, the purpose of Vedanta, Advaita Vedanta, or any of the systems of Vedanta. The purpose of it is the same purpose as we would go to a dentist to get a tooth fixed because there's pain in the tooth, or we're not able to macerate, to eat properly, or we broke a foot and to get a cast on it. And in that case, there's a problem, and the problem is, well, I have a broken foot and a lot of pain, I can't walk around. And the solution is I go to the doctor, I get it reset, and I get a cast. In this case, when we're dealing with suffering, we're saying, there does not seem to be any end of the suffering. How can I end the suffering? That's the problem. We go to a saint, we go to one who sage, we go to the teaching of Vedanta, and we say, what's the cause of my suffering first? And the doctor knows what's the cause of the pain in the broken foot. He knows it's the broken foot, right? And in this case, the Shankaracharya knows what's the cause of the suffering. And so Vedanta is about the cure for suffering. It's about taking it. And just like when I go to the doctor with my broken foot and get my broken foot set, and now I can walk around, the fact that I do that does not help someone else who has a broken foot. Yeah? In the same way is Vedanta. Although, in the case of Vedanta, if I'm free of suffering, then I serve a role which is I can help to point the way, to those that still are. Kind of like, I suppose, in the broken foot example, if I'm walking around in a cast and somebody else doesn't know about that, I can help them out by pointing out that there's a doctor down the road that can fix that broken foot and you'll be able to walk again. So, efficacy. So the system of philosophy that he's expounding upon, really, in all of the sciences, we're involved in the same thing, but we're doing it from a purely objective level here. The world, as it seems to be, doesn't really make sense. And all of us discover that at some point. One of the beautiful parallels to the philosophy here really is seen in modern science. Some of us, when we find out that the world doesn't seem to make sense, what does that mean? It doesn't seem to be the way we heard that it was, or people say it is, or because it seems to be about finding happiness, but happiness is elusive, and it seems to be about becoming successful, learning and becoming successful, but success is elusive. And so all of us at some point, we have in the heart something beating saying that there's more to this. Deep within us, we have the feeling there's more, or there's something to be gained here, right? That propels us, as it were. And at the same time, the experience of life is quite jarring. And if you're joining us online and disagree, then please say so. But it's quite jarring. I, of course, remember the dealing with this and then falling into a Great Depression. I was realizing that I didn't know, because I'd lived a life as if I knew something, but I was realizing I don't know anything, because I don't even know what this life is. I just assumed that everybody knows what life is, and now I'm living it. And I didn't even know the rules of life. At some point I realized it's important. So I went off to science, and scientists are a group who are bothered about life. And when we're bothered about life, we can either just try to live being bothered, or try to set it aside, or drink our bother away, or take pills to get our bother to be numbed out, so that we don't have to deal with being bothered. We can just be numb. Or because trying to set aside being bothered is very difficult, because that bothers us too. So, or we try to do something about it, which is try to figure something out. And scientists are trying to figure something out. That's what that is. And the religions are actually the real, not proselytizing, but the real search for that which is higher, are also about trying to figure out this life in one direction, and science goes a different direction. But they tend to have parallels. They're both actually seeking. Where the masses of us, we're not bothered enough maybe to seek yet, something like that, or we're in the process of becoming bothered enough to care, to find out if we know something or not. Here's our sciences, and when I was very bothered and starting to come out of the depression, I went back to science and dove into modern physics and cosmology, where the search is on to find out what this world is. What is this life, and what is this world? And what's been discovered, of course, is quantum behavior, which is that the small objects, things, the material view is this is exactly what it appears to be. It's a piece of wood. It came from a tree, and it was built in a factory by a man or a woman who knew how to build these things, and then it went on a physical ship and all of that. That's the materialist view. The world began. We don't know how it began, but it began. And then from there, we can pretty well explain or figure out everything else. Except in the process of trying to figure out everything else, what was discovered was this great anomaly that if you break things up into smaller and smaller pieces, eventually you get to where the thing is no longer a thing. And that's what was discovered in quantum physics. And it's been proven to be so, that the thing that we thought was a thing is actually energy. And so what we've ended up with in modern science, in physics, is an apparent duality, which is that at the subatomic level, this material reality is not material at all. It doesn't behave according to any of the laws that we thought existed. It doesn't behave according to the law of gravity or any of that at the subatomic level. It has its own set of laws. So there's the law of the small, which is, and you see it in an electron, for example, spinning around the core of an atom. It spins, and sometimes it changes its radius. Sometimes it changes the orbit, yeah. And when it changes its orbit in the physical world, the way that would happen is forces would cause it to gradually drift out or gradually come in closer. But in the subatomic world, it just disappears here and appears there. And it never existed in between those 2 points. And then the discovery is that at the subatomic level, we're dealing with waves, not things. But at the atomic level and up, it seems that a whole different set of laws apply, and now we're dealing with things. This is the great mystery that science is dealing with, and they're looking for the unifying theory because this doesn't make any sense, frankly. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense that this is built of things that at a different level are not actually things, but are energy. So the realization from the scientists is, well, then it's not really a thing, but it seems to be a thing. And into this crazy mixed up situation, Shankaracharya steps in and says, the thing is not a thing. It is the energy. The I is not the body. It is the energy. And the body is the energy. Even deeper than that, he says, even deeper than that. So he steps into the same. What we find invariably is that when we really study something, when we really study it, when we set aside our own ideas and opinions of what it is, we find out that it's not what we thought it was. And so Shankaracharya wades into this mess and says, and having apparently experienced the reality, and he propounds. And so this is where we start with this. So now we'll stick with the scientific view for a moment and just explain this concept of real and not real, as well as we can today in 4 minutes, which is, okay, this harmonium then, this wood that makes the dear harmonium, is it real or is it not real? And here's what we get. It has some reality. But if I'm looking for the ultimate reality of it, that is what is it made of really? Then I have to do exactly what the scientists are doing. I have to do exactly what the physicists are doing. I have to to take the wood apart and look at it for its source. And I have to keep doing that until I get to its ultimate source. And then I can say, okay, it's made of this. Here's the real reality of it. And for a long, long time, science would have said the real reality of this is the atom. The atom. And they broke that down to the proton, the neutron, and the electron. And they said that is the ultimate reality of this. So they could say then, it's not really a piece of wood, it's really atoms. And this is this real, unreal. So is it unreal? No. But is it wood? No. Well, then what is the reality of it? This is what's, when we're talking about real, unreal, world, real, unreal, in this term mithya, it's really about this. I can't say that it's unreal because here it is and here I am. But can I say that it's really wood? I cannot say that either. Because 100 years ago, I would have said it's really atoms, which are formed in the shape of wood and through a process become a tree. They get together and form a tree. But the highest reality of it is atoms. I could have said something like that 100 some years ago based upon the scientific view. But now I can't even say that. Because I say, is it real? Meaning, is it a harmonium made of wood? I have to say, no, it's not. It's ultimate reality. It's real reality. What it was before it was a harmonium and what it will be after it is a harmonium is the atoms? No, it's not. It's the energy, the underlying energy. And that's what Shankaracharya is saying here. And this, in the study of real, when he says the world is real, we get into it. We see it's neither real nor unreal. That is, you can't deny its existence, but you can say, if I'm looking for the ultimate existence, the highest existence, the real existence, the existence which doesn't change, because everything else is changing, right? You come back in 100 years, this harmonium won't be playable any longer, and God knows where it will be. And 1,000 years, it will be back to the elements, right? Yeah. So if I'm looking for what's the real reality here, and this is the quest, because if you really want to understand life and you really want to understand who I am, and if you hear the sage or saint saying, "Know thyself and be free," and at some point it really starts to resonate, then you say, "I need to know what this life is. I need to know." Now you're dealing with what's real, not what's constantly changing, but what's the underlying reality? Because the constantly changing is the appearance of things, right? Right now, this is the energy, underlying energy, appearing as wood, appearing as a harmonium. And by the way, for Swami, this body, it's the same thing. So we'll explore this some as we go through the text as well. But as the author is saying, real, not real, this is the quest. What is real always? What was always real? And what will always be real? And because we're dealing with different realities, we know, we can infer correctly that there is an ultimate reality. And the scientists have done this. Through their study, they start with the understanding that this is relatively real, which means it's borrowing its reality from something. I as an individual person, this body, this, let's say for a moment that Swami says, I am this body. Yeah, that's recorded. Oh no. I hope nobody takes that out. But let's just say Swami says something like that. Then, where did Swami come from? To what does Swami owe his reality? And the answer would have to be to my parents, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So there you go. To the seed that came in my mother and the semen that came in my father, I owe my reality. So they are therefore more real than I as this person. Yeah? Because I'm from them. And in the same way here, science and Vedanta, where did the principles, where did the philosophies come from? It comes from that process of looking for what's the real reality. And finally, Shankaracharya is saying, okay, then what is the ultimate reality from which all of this comes? Which is what all of this is, even though it's appearing as this or that or this. And this is where he says, Brahma Sat. So Brahman, the absolute, Satchidananda, is that ultimate reality. Now he's just saying that. For us to really know it and to live it, we have to go on the quest ourselves, but he's our guide if we choose for that. Yeah? So he says, I know this. Brahma Sat. Brahman, the absolute, is that ultimate reality. And in that way, scientists couldn't actually disagree, even though they may try. They can't disagree that even the energy came from something, and they're also doing their best to understand that. And so, Brahma Satyam, the world, Jagat Mithya, doesn't mean it's unreal, but it also is saying it's like this: it's neither real nor unreal. It's made of that which is real, but it itself, all of these forms, all these shapes, all these names, all of this stuff moving about, all of these experiences, they have an ultimate reality because all of this is temporal. It's changing constantly. Yeah? It's constantly in construction or destruction. Right now, destruction, big time. So it's not independently real. It owes its reality to a deeper reality. And he says that deeper reality is Brahman, the absolute, the unchanging. And that then the I and that are one. And of course they have to be. In the materialist view, I and my parents are non-different. Naparaha, non-different. In the materialist view, I and my parents are non-different. Is it so?
Right.
Yeah. In the materialist view, the tree is non-different from the seed, is non-different from the tree before. And so in the same way here, he says that the individual I, and that absolute are non-different. Okay, so we'll pick up there in the morning and continue and discuss all of the quandaries that brings, and do our best to share in a meaningful way and support your path. Thank you, Hari. Okay. Nothing at all?
Someone said different chants. Great. I'm not sure.
Okay, very good. So we're still online. Okay, so final prayer in RT, short version this morning, page 156.
Okay.
Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Orvai Rukaneva Bandhanan Mritor Mokshiyamamritat Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Orvai Rukaneva Bandhanan Mritor Mokshiyamamritat Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Orvai Rukameva Bandhanan Mritor Mokshiyamamritat Om Shanti 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 Amalo Satguru Shivananda Maharaj Ki
Jai.
Jai, for all the saints and sages of all the traditions.
Jai.
Jai.